scope or getting a personal short-term result. Right. So I don't know how much we are with time, and I don't know if anybody has a question from.
Do you think that carbon fiber is hard enough to resist penetration with the roller in a long period of time?
Yes, I ran some analysis. First of all, and that is the Earth's contact theories. There are some online you can calculate. Yes, that's right. It's also the trunnions are 2 inches wide, so it's quite a wide surface to distribute because it's a matter of pressure, it's not a matter of force itself. The telescope itself is fairly lightweight, so the old part that is insisting on those rollers is probably 150 pounds. So divided it by 4, I call it.
The roller width is such that won't the inside smooth, the outside be different? So it would scrape some instead of rolling.
I don't think.
Yeah, we had 3 ball bearings side by side.
I mean, on the action, it's like in a car, you go around the corner. But
Yeah, they are not. They are not. So there are 3, and they are not glued together, so they can have differential speed. Clearly, there's a level of one is going to be more than the other, but in practical terms, we couldn't tell absolutely any scraping. So, but that is one of the things that you will see. Probably if it's going to be in a machine that needs to run 24 hours a day, might be a big issue. With this stuff, I don't know. We will see.
Well, I don't have a question, but from everything that you've told us and I've seen on Cloudy Night, I think you're well on your way to succeeding. Now, as everyone here who has made it on telescope knows, once you get it all together and the debugging begins, that's where you get down into things that you just never expected.
Yeah,
you'd have to mess with. But yeah, I think this time next year you'll be telling us about all your debugging and how you solved the issues you came across and how well it's working.
we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions? All right.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I love all the analyses that you're doing to really. Oh, here's your. What's that? Yeah. All right. Stop the share. Okay. All right. So I got a lot out of that. There's a great deal to learn from doing analysis up front rather than just building and hoping for the best. And I think, I fall firmly in the camp where I'm just going to copy a telescope or components that is working on somebody else's telescope and know that it should work on mine. But yeah, these analyses are really powerful looking tools.
Astronomy is a passion. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff that we do out of enthusiasm. And there are tools that I would find a little bit more see. That is the way to go.
Okay. Well, I'm up next. So, oops, shouldn't have done that. Let's escape from there. Okay, and back to Zoom. Okay, here we go. So I'm next. And this is a presentation I had no inkling that I would be doing a year ago. So, and you'll see why as we get into it. Okay. Full screen. All right, here we go. Okay, I chose this picture as a lead into my presentation because it was just a really beautiful sunset. This is my new 30-inch scope under its tarp. This is at a place called Logan Valley in Eastern Oregon, which is an absolutely beautiful place to go and observe. There's no place darker. This big grassy meadow, I don't know, it's probably several square miles in area. It's just beautiful. But anyway, that's nothing to do with the presentation, but I like it.
Now, let me guess, that's a sunset, not a sunrise.
That is a sunset. The west is to the right in the photo, yes. Okay, so. All right, before I get there. Okay, transforming a 28-inch f4 telescope into a 30-inch f2.7. Okay, so this is where I began, 28-inch f4. I first began making this telescope in January of 2004. And from that January in 2004 until January of this year, this telescope gradually evolved into what I consider to be just about the perfect observing telescope for me, because it's all just customized for myself and all the work I did to make it so intuitive and easy and ergonomically friendly for me to observe with. All right. So then I transformed it into this, the 30-inch f2.7, which is set up here in Dan's shop. And probably the first thing that pops into most people's mind is, okay, but why? A 30-inch mirror is not that much bigger than a 28-inch. I'm not gathering a ton more photons. I mean, the images aren't going to be significantly brighter. So why would I basically destroy a perfectly good 28-inch telescope to make it into a 30-inch? Well, that's what I'm going to tell you about. Because of this man, mostly. Well, not even mostly. It's entirely because of Mel. Yeah. Well, Mel made two of these 30-inch f2.7 mirrors. And I was at his place last October, just about this time. And I went there to observe with him for a couple of nights. And the first night was really nice. It was beautifully dark. We observe and have a great time. The next night, it's kind of cloudy and scuzzy and we don't observe. So we're sitting in his living room and we're chit-chatting, and Mel had been telling me about the 30-inch mirrors quite a bit because they were finished at that time. They weren't, he hadn't silvered his, and his telescope wasn't completely put together yet. As I recall, maybe it was. But anyway, so we're talking and I says, now Mel, how much do those 30-inch mirrors weigh again? And he said, oh, 38 pounds. And I'm going, huh. And I'm thinking to myself, well, as I remember when I designed the mirror box for my 28-inch, I think there's like 31.5 inches space inside of there. So we talked, and it just made more and more sense as we were talking. And I was thinking that because I need to grab the mirror out of the telescope to silver the mirror, and that the 28-inch mirror weighs 92 pounds, it's 54 pounds more, it just made so much sense. Why not get the 30-inch mirror that Mel doesn't need because it's a spare? I have a bad back. I'm getting older. I mean, I'm 67 years old now. So although I could still get the 28-inch out of there, I had to really plan ahead and stretch out and get ready, and I might make my back sore anyway. So this basically just kind of documents what I just said, how the 30 inches, it's 5/8 inch thick, as Mel had mentioned yesterday, only 38 pounds versus the 92 pounds of a 28-inch mirror, which is 2 inches thick. 54-pound difference. 54 pounds is a lot. I mean, just lifting 54 pounds by itself is a lot. But lifting that with another 38 pounds in there for 92-pound lift is something that would have been significant to me in my 20s. So I'm actually feel kind of lucky I could still do it now, but yeah, I don't want to throw my back out in the middle of doing that. So I like these two photos together because the one on the right shows the 28-inch mirror right after it had been silvered. And the picture on the left in the middle of the screen shows my 30-inch Mel's B mirror right after I had silvered it in my garage. And really, I can tell you that picking up that 38-pound meniscus mirror is so much easier. It's not a strain at all, for me right now. And I'm extremely happy. And I should mention that while I was at Mel's, I thought to myself, well, I want to get this mirror, but I need to talk to my wife first. So when I got home, within a minute of me explaining this whole possible deal, she was all, do it. I do not want to see you throw your back out lifting that big 28-inch mirror. So Judy was all on board, and I was a happy man. Okay, so overall, the 30-inch is about 65 pounds lighter, which includes the lighter weight mirror, than the 28-inch version of it was. And that also makes a big difference in moving it in and out of my garage and van. And yeah, actually, that's really exciting for me because, I hope to be able to continue to use this telescope into my 80s, to be able to get it into my van and drive off someplace dark and use it. So this is a really exciting development for me. Also, this shot shows my observing ladder, my formerly 8-foot tall observing ladder. It's a tripod ladder. It's sometimes called an orchard ladder. It started off at 8 feet when I used it for my 28-inch because it was 2.5 feet longer. I cut about that much off the bottom, so now it's a 6-foot ladder. And also notice, if you can see the bottom step here, it's just off the ground. So that's my quarter step. So when I say here, I just need 1 1/4 steps to reach the eyepiece. That means I'm standing on this rung to be able to look into the eyepiece here. And also the fact that I still have a ladder, could I have designed the scope to where I wouldn't have needed a ladder? Yeah, I probably could have, but I like ladders. I can lean against the ladder. I can use it to steady myself. When I'm just standing at a telescope looking at an eyepiece, I have a more difficult time holding my head and my eyes steady. So I like ladders. It puts me in a minority. Now, a really big side bonus is the fact that at lowest power, I can get over 1 degree true field of view, which I could not approach with the 28-inch. And those views, as Mel has already talked a great deal about, are really spectacular. It's something that needs to be seen to be appreciated. All right, so in the course of this project, there were new things that were incorporated into the existing telescope structure, and there are modifications to the existing structure. So that's what I'm going to talk about now. First, the new stuff. The very first thing I did was make a 3D model, because that's what we do today, because we can, and it's not that hard. But it also meant, because in 2004, when I designed the 28-inch, I didn't design it in 3D, I designed it in 2D. So that meant the azimuth and the altitude assembly here that has the drive did not exist in 3D yet. So I had to create basically the entire telescope in 3D. In this case, I used SketchUp. And because that was the 3D program I started learning about 6 years ago. And so this was a fun process. And this is the design I ended up using. The cage design is pretty much a direct knockoff of what Mel did on his 30-inch, although His is all out of wood. This is a material, a completely different material, a composite that I'll get to in a minute. So here's a list of all the new stuff. And we'll go through each one of these right now. Okay, first, of course, is the 30-inch mirror, Mills B mirror. In fact, on the back side of this, in big black ink, he wrote B. So there's no doubt it's the B mirror. Okay, now here's a cage, better shot of the cage. That's me on the left holding it right after I first assembled it. This is made out of 3mm dye bond. Now, dye bond is a composite material that has a polycarbonate core and a very thin skin of aluminum on both sides. So it's very flat. It cuts like wood and it's extremely light. There is a 6mm version called a Lucabond that I had used previously on the 28-inch for the cage. And I probably, in retrospect, I would have been well served to have used the 6mm version here. This works, but it's not as stout a material. And so I have to handle it more carefully. Okay, then the 7-inch minor axis, 1-inch thick diagonal mirror from Ostahowski Optics. Okay, now the first thing that strikes me is that my diagonal mirror is 1-inch thick and the primary mirror is 5/8 inch thick. That's a proportion that's usually goes the other way. And this particular shot, oh, and by the way, the major axis is a little over 11 inches. This thing here, this is the jig, the wire spider jig that holds the diagonal and diagonal holder exactly where it needs to be as the wires for the wire spider are strung. And then once the wires are in, you take off the jig and you're all set. And that's a very important step, by the way, to do a wire jig. If you don't do it this way, you're going to end up doing it this way. Because I tried a different way first. Okay, here's a close-up of the diagonal mirror holder, which I bought from Astro Systems. In retrospect, I would have been better served to have made my own, because only from the standpoint that it took so long for this to arrive. There was about 2 months of downtime waiting for this just to arrive. And that was the second thing I ordered after ordering the diagonal mirror itself. It works perfectly fine. So I don't have any complaints with that. These two pieces here are 1/2-inch thick aluminum. And when they arrived, they were solid aluminum. So this was a hefty chunk of metal. What I did, well, my first response was like, holy crap, this is way too heavy. So I've drilled about 30 holes, 3/4 inch holes to lighten this thing up and got out half the weight. And you don't see the holes because I covered it with a material called flockboard, which is self-adhesive and it's very black. And so you'd never know there's a bunch of holes there. And the mirror is RTV'd to this base plate. And then there's 3 safety clips or disaster clips, maybe better said, to make sure that it never falls out. All right, so other photos of this assembly, the diagonal mirror hub. And by the hub, I'm talking about this part. Okay, so coming out of here is a 1/2-inch diameter bolt. And that is going, and that is passing all the way through the hub to here, where it's kind of overexposed, but this is a bolt and a nut, oops, sorry, holding this in place. And so this bottom plate and this top plate are 3mm thick aluminum. These 4 rods are solid aluminum rods. And in the center here is 4-inch diameter PVC pipe. about 6 millimeter wall thickness. And between these rods are screwed on, and those compress these two plates to the top of the PVC pipe. And then when this nut is fully tightened, that even sucks everything down together. And this has proven surprisingly robust. I really thought this would be what I would make just to get the first light, and then I'd make something better. But this has worked out really quite well. And the wire spider. Here you can see here this photo. The wires are kind of faint to see, but you can make them out. Again, following the basic, generally accepted way to do a wire spider these days. And this is the wire I use. It actually, just from my local hardware store, came in black. Couldn't believe it. So I thought it was a good way to go rather than using silver wire. Oh, one more thing about this. The wire spider, you can see these attachment points here. These are eye bolts. And then there's a nylon nut at the end of here. And this is how the diagonal mirror is collimated. If I just have a little wrench, I can turn the little nut here to pull and turn the diagonal to make sure it's in the right place. Now, normally it stays very close to where it should be, except when I transport it in the van and it gets bounced around on the road. Then I have to recollimate it. I think Mel on his 30-inch, which has a very similar structure for his diagonal wire spider, I don't think he's had to recollimate yet, just because he rolls it about 20 feet from his shop and rolls it back in 20 feet. Okay, then the new light baffles. This lower part is attached to the cage permanently, and this material is called flock board. It's made by Protostar, and it's this shiny black plastic on the inside, but it's this velvetly black material on the inside, and it's all one material. I don't know how it's made, but it's wonderful and it's absolutely perfect for telescopes. The top part is removable, and you can see the eyepiece is located about halfway in between. Oh, for those of you who know about Protostar, you're probably aware it has a terrible reputation for delivering. But in my case, 2 days after I ordered this stuff, it arrived. So it was a totally good experience. All right, modifications. These are the three main modifications. Okay, now, this is the mirror cell, obviously. This is made for the 28-inch. This is basically right after I've taken it out of the 28-inch. But the first major modification, this piece here, this is 1-inch square steel tubing, as is everything black here on the cell. That originally ran through here. And I had to cut that out because the depth of the curve of the 30-inch meniscus mirror would hit right on top of that if I hadn't cut it out. So out it came, and it was a real pain in the neck to do. That's for sure. And originally, I mean, I had, for the 28-inch mirror, I had 2 edge supports here and here, but those weren't going to work on this 38-inch meniscus mirror. And so I installed the swing exactly as Mel had. And you might be able to tell if you look really close, the inside of this aluminum sling looks kind of tannish color. That is because I applied Teflon tape, adhesive back Teflon tape. So the mirror wouldn't bind with the sling and cause astigmatism. And that's worked wonderfully.
Where did you get that?
On Amazon. Yeah, I can send you the link. Yeah. And then this is just the bracket that I made where the sling attaches to the mirror cell. Now this was a really cool thing that worked out, because this is one of those things that you just never know how it's going to work out. But I had a pretty good idea in this case, because I did something similar for the Cal Poly 18-inch years ago. The original mechanical attachment I had with the back support triangles in the mirror cell was basically a short bolt that had an acorn nut, which had kind of a semi-spherical surface on it. But that didn't give these triangles enough freedom to move because of the steep curve of the meniscus mirror. So this is a highly magnetic sphere. And this is a steel washer that I've screwed to the back of this aluminum triangle. This pivot arm is also steel. So this magnet sticks like crazy to this washer, and it sticks like crazy to this pivot arm. And the freedom of movement is just astonishing. In fact, do I have a picture up here? No, I don't. Well, you can kind of see it here. You can see how the triangles are just flopping all over the place. That's just because they move so easily. All right, so then these are the sections of the truss tubes for the 28-inch that I had to cut off for the much shorter focal length. So 81-inch focal length for the 30-inch versus 112.5 for the F4 28-inch. So 2.5 feet. That's a big difference. And now this is the, this shows one of the parts that I say it's modified because I started off modifying the version of this I had on the 28-inch, and I got a long way into it before I decided this is just a totally messed up job. So I made a brand new version of it. This is the front baffle / air nozzle. That's part of Ed Allen's complete ventilation system, which I'll talk a lot more about later on in this presentation. Well, this is a big part of the system that cools the mirror evenly on the back and the front sides. Okay, and these are the parts I reused. The azimuth-based mirror box, altitude trunnions, and the drive, the SideTech controller. Probably the second version you ever made. Dan, I'm looking at Dan. And it's working just as well now as it ever did. So all of this, number 1 and 2, that's all in here. And basically, not having to recreate that made this project really appealing from the start. I had a question from Jerry Oltian back at the beginning of this, where he says, Howard, why didn't you just sell the 28-inch? I mean, you got all this money for it, and then build a whole new telescope. And the real answer to that is that I had spent 18 years perfecting this, and I really liked how it worked. So, plus on the practical side, aluminum is a lot more expensive now than it was 18 years ago. So, and then there's a list of the other things that I've reused. This shroud and this shroud are actually the same. It only looks like it fits on this much shorter 30-inch because I've rolled up the bottom. But I'm either going to modify that this winter or make a brand new one. I'm not fully decided on that. The balance, so the balance is fine.
Did you have to adjust like location of the mirror cell or anything like that?
No, it's a really good. So the question is, what about balance? Was balance affected by going to the much shorter focal length 30-inch mirror? And it is kind of a long answer, but the you know, when I made the 28-inch years ago, I weighed every component. I had it all written down, and I put it someplace where it would be safe. And God only knows where that is now. so I really didn't have a solid place to begin to do a calculation on how much the front end needed to weigh now. So I just did what I always did. I just plot ahead and see where I'd end up. And as it turned out, first iteration, the new cage was too light, even with everything on it, with the finder scope and the quin sight and the paracore and eyepiece and the light baffles and all of that. But I was able to very, I think cleverly, add more weight that doesn't just look like a counterweight. And I'll point that out when I have a better photo up here on the screen. So as it stands right now, it's as well balanced as it was when it was a 28-inch. Yeah, you know, what'll probably happen is that sometime in the next few months, I'll find that sheet, right? Wrote down the weights of everything. Because that's just how it goes, right? Okay, so this is a quick review of Ed's complete ventilation system. This is his diagram. You know, this is the HEPA filter. You can see it on the back end of my scope. It's got the fans inside. So the air gets pulled in, it gets filtered, and then it gets diffused into the back of the mirror box. You can see it flows around the backside. This is that front baffle air nozzle, and the air comes along the front surface of the mirror. Now, if you look at these easy to miss red lines here on the sides of the mirror, edge insulation. That turned out to be very important. That's basically an insulating wrap that goes around the outside edge of the mirror. And what that does is, as air is flowing on the back side of the mirror around the edge to the front of the mirror, is that means heat isn't escaping from the edge of the mirror more so than from the interior. So just the back surface and the front surface are being cooled at a fairly even rate. And that helps control the optical figure of the mirror because it's so thin. And the first time I put everything together, I didn't do that. I had forgotten to do that. And when I looked in the eyepiece, it was just horrifying. It was so overcorrected. It was like, if I hadn't gotten the mirror from Mel and known how good it was, I would have had a fit thinking this mirror is trash. So the lesson here is, you know, when you're using someone else's sophisticated system, follow all the instructions. Do it the way it was designed. Here's a picture of the wrap. And the I'm using right now, it's called synthetic leather. It's coagulated polyurethane. It's used in making shoes all the time. I know that because I was in the shoe industry for so long. And that works okay, but it's a temperature and humidity affects it. So in fact, when Rob was over one night, it just fell off because it was terrible.
It swelled in the humidity, right?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it did. So, and this shows that front baffle and air nozzle, and you can see the air gap right along here where the air comes streaming across the front surface of the mirror. Okay, and this is now controlling the optical figure of the 5/8 inch thick, 30-inch diameter meniscus mirror. Mel touched on this a good deal yesterday, and this has been the steepest learning curve of the whole project for me. Because these two mirrors are affected by air temperature so much, or they can be affected so much, depending on all the mitigating measures that are taken. It's controlling the the figure of the mirror with basically just a fan. It turns out to be relatively straightforward once I wrap my mind around what was going on. So it's not difficult, but at first it's a different way to, it's much different than using a 2-inch thick flat back mirror, which usually starts off looking pretty good in the eyepiece. If you just roll it out or it sits out in the sun all day, it barely matters. Well, here it does matter. So finding and maintaining the true figure is in a way really kind of exciting, because when you get it right, on these two mirrors, what you get is essentially a perfect star test. And a perfect star test in a 30-inch f2.7 mirror, I mean, come on. Well, yeah, Mel made the mirrors, and we all, those of us on the Oregon Scopeworks email list, all know the pains he went through and his crazy skill level. So I really expected the B mirror to be very good. I didn't expect to be able to get a perfect star test. I mean, when I say perfect star test, I mean a perfect star test. I mean, the edge on both sides of focus looks great. There's no fuzzing out on inside or outside of focus. Diagonal breakouts exactly the same. There's no huge zones. I mean, it's beautiful. For anybody who's ever gone through the process of making a mirror, getting into a telescope, and finally being able to star test it, and you do that racking back and forth in and out of focus, inside and outside of focus, it's a thing of beauty to see. So being able to control that mirror to stay within that Goldilocks zone with, in my case, I have 3 radial fans in the back. So just by being able to use those fans or not using those fans at the appropriate time makes that sensitivity to temperature a feature in my mind.
Do you have variable speed on those?
Yes. Oh yes, variable speed. I can go from barely on to full blast just by turning a knob. So it's just about this easy. Does the mirror look a little overcorrected? Turn on the fan. Looking undercorrected, turn off the fan. And sometimes that means also rolling up the shroud a little bit to help the front side of the mirror cool off. But it depends also on how the outside air temperature and what it's doing. Is it falling quickly? Is it falling slowly? Has it fallen as much as it's going to, and then some warm air comes in? It's something, it's another thing to track, but the payoff is huge because of the optical quality that's there. So yeah, to have a essentially perfect star test in a mirror this size throughout the night is really, really special. And so that trip I took to see Mel last October has paid off to me personally in ways that I had no way to appreciate at the time. So thank you, Mel. And thank you. This is a sketch I made of Stefan's quintet when I was at Chickahominy Reservoir back in August. I met Ed Allen there, and I just had to take a look because that was one of the objects that JWST had imaged. Yeah, it just was a really nice view of that. So any questions?
That looks like Stefan's sextet.
Yeah, there's 5 here and there's 1 here. Yeah. Yes. But that one isn't considered part of it. Yeah. And for those of you who are here, I mean, you've been looking at the telescope for the last day. And so you probably don't have much questions anymore because I've been talking myself semi-hoarse about it, and it's been a lot of fun. So if there's anybody out there has anything they want to know or comment on, now's your time. Okay, I guess I just blow you all away. That's great. So given that, and that we have reached our break time, let's see, where are we with time? Oh gosh, there's a lot of time left before scheduled break. I talked faster than I thought. So somebody asked me a penetrating question that I never considered. No? No?
Hey,
Joe.
Howard, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. How did you hold the synthetic rubber? How did you manage that between your support strap?
Gaffer's tape. There's a few strips of gaffer's tape.
But you put the strap is obviously outside, so the
Right,
installation goes first, and then it's outside, and it wasn't too compliant.
No, it's not too compliant. It doesn't compress hardly at all. And the bottom half, the part that the sling contacts, that holds it in place. The other half, the top half, I just have, I think, 4, maybe 1.5 inch long thin strips of gaffer tape that I just have on the side of the insulation, and it goes to the back side of the mirror, and that's held it in place.
Okay. Okay, good. Yeah.
I've
Can you
got a
go?
question.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Joe.
You can't hear you, Russ. Oh, I think you froze. Yeah, I think you froze on us, Joe, Russ. So we can't hear you. No. All right.
Hey, Howard, can you tell us about your flat? How's it holding up as far as dew when you're running your system?
Well, it hasn't come close to doing up. I actually have a dew heater on the back, which I put on because from my home when I observe, very often it's my weather station says it's 99% humidity. So I just have that as a precaution. But typically when I'm running the fans for the CVS, they're on high only very early in the evening when I'm first getting the mirror temperature evened out. Excuse me. And so, but after that, it's on very low. So I don't think that air column is reaching the diagonal mirror, but also the diagonal is 1 inch thick solid glass. And so I think it would take an exceptionally dewy night for that to have any problems with moisture. But either way, I think I'm all set and won't have to worry about it. Yeah. Russ, you're moving around again, so maybe you can try.
Yeah, fast question. Howard, actually, it's for Michael. And so one thing I wondered, if you did a design from scratch that you were really just worried about weight and stiffness and resonant frequency, and you would kind of have any weird geometry that came up. In other words, instead of a conventional telescope, you did a small telescope strictly from first principles on weight, stress, and the kind of the dynamics of it. Is it possible you come up with an entirely different telescope? Maybe Mel has thought about this. He comes up with different ideas.
Well, I don't think McKelly actually heard all that, but I'll paraphrase it to him. So Russ is just curious that, given the analyses that you've been doing for the 800 meter project, do you see that perhaps leading to designing telescopes that look completely different?
Yeah, if you had started from a stress fundamental frequency first.
Not completely different, but some steps in order to, I think there are a lot of things that you can telescope that you can do without. It's like less is more.
Yeah, okay.
Less is more.
He's saying not completely different, but there's certainly through analysis, he's finding that there are parts of telescopes that are typically included that really aren't needed. So the appearance may change somewhat, but and also just my own comment is, I mean, telescopes have been made for quite a while. And so I think there's been a lot of optimization done just through making so many of them. Well, that's just my addition. That's not anything he said. So, okay.
Just make an example.
Oh.
There's a big topic about 6 versus 8 volts. I think we are hardwired as engineers. Symmetry is all about that. So 8 looks absolutely great. But if you look at the analysis, 6 volts is likely a few percentage point worse than the reflection. In my case, it was a matter of these tubes usually get close to so I think 6 is very instead of 8 times.
Yeah.
That's that. Mind complicated with the geometry, but that is where the analysis is right away. There's no
Okay.
point in doing that.
Okay, they probably didn't hear all that. So Michele was saying that just as an example of how a telescope might look different through doing these careful analyses is that the difference between 8 truss poles and 6 truss poles. In his analyses, there is little difference between the two in terms of how effective they work. Just a few percentage points, he said. And so, yeah, so people argue back and forth on which is better, but when he did the analysis, because, you know, truss tubes, whether they're aluminum or especially if they're carbon fiber, can be rather expensive. Going with the minimum number that still works really well, but also looks very different, made the decision to use 6 poles very easy, I think. Yeah. So
yeah, kind of a follow-up question would be kind of for him and also for Dan. If you're going from kind of a weight and stiffness viewpoint, and so then they try to get a high natural frequency. At what natural frequency point do you say it's good enough, and then let's don't work on it anymore?
I think he's talking to you, Dan.
I think it's a $1 million question.
$1 million question.
I put an excellent file because there are some available information from professional survey. And it really goes with the meter. Meaning that you cannot strive for a high frequency on a big telescope. It's going to be too expensive, but almost achievable. For 30 inches, I select 20, knowing that it's 15 inches wide. But for example, closing one, remember there's a Japanese telescope that is 2.5 meters or slightly over 2 meters, and a target of 9 hertz. So it all looks on the same.
Okay. So Michele was saying that he chose 20 hertz for his 800 millimeter. Just kind of plucking the number out of the air based on what he's seen from other telescopes. And he mentioned an example of a Japanese telescope he knows about that was over 2 meters that has a frequency of 9 hertz. So he thinks he's basically shooting at 20 hertz for the 800 millimeter as a target. And I guess we'll just have to wait and see how it turns out. Yeah. Okay, let's see. There's 2.
Well, I just wondered, does Dan have some experience?
Yeah, bad experience.
I will talk about it in my talk.
Okay, so I did.
Stay
Okay,
tuned.
thanks.
Stay tuned. Okay, so we got a comment from Mel. One just says 10 hertz. That's based on the scope quivering 3 to 4 times before the decay is absorbed. Be careful that the quivering does not shake into another part, like the diagonal, that resonates slower, that then dumps energy back into the tube structure. And then in parentheses, he has a Swayze 40-inch. And that's significant with wood as opposed to metal. So yeah, those are good points. Yeah, making sure that the scope is rigid in its components as they attach to each other, that a bump to one part doesn't send everything quivering on its own frequency. Yeah. And then here's a comment from Ed. It says, are you going to add night vision to the bonus points list for the 2.7? Yeah, but I wasn't going to really talk about that today. Mel mentioned it yesterday. That might be a topic for next year. But I'll just briefly mention, because we do have some time, a little bit of time, that that observing with Ed, especially when it's just the two of us, it was an expensive proposition. And because he has one of the most high quality night vision devices that you can buy. And combined with the short focal length of the 30-inch and the silver coatings it has, makes it unbelievably, the views are unbelievable. I mean, it's just, I won't even try to describe the gain from looking through the eyepiece with a normal eyepiece to looking through the night vision device. It's just beyond comparison. But anyway, they're expensive. And so I have Ed to thank for me emptying my wallet out very soon when I purchase one. So yeah, and I'll talk about that next year if I can afford to be here.
Yeah, I'm good at spending other people's money.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Oh, by the way, I did get that ground cover, that mesh tarp that you have, and you probably noticed that in the very first image in my slide. And it's a different color on each side. It's green on one side and orange on the other, which is perfect for Oregon. All right, so okay, it's 3:33. That seems like a remarkably good number to take a break on. So let's go ahead and take a 10-minute break, and we'll be back, more like a 12-minute break. And we'll be back 3:45 to listen to Zane talk about his meniscus mirror projects, and then Dan will bring us home with the